All K&S Society TALK Live episodes may contain subject matter that may be too mature for listeners under 18 years of age. If under 18 years of age, get your parents' or guardian permission before listening. Also, views discussed in any K&S Society TALK Live shows do not reflect on our personal opinions or opinions of our supporters. Thank you for listening to tonight's show, and I hope you enjoy.
This is the movie that Rex Reed called the most horrifying motion picture I have ever seen. This film is positively ruthless in its attempt to drive you right out of your mind. It accomplishes everything it sets out to do with brilliance and unparalleled terror. Franklin! This is the horror movie to end them all.
Sally, I hear something. Stop! Stop!
This is the movie Rex Reed called the most horrifying motion picture I have ever seen. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from New Line Cinema.
Welcome, everyone, to K&S Society TALK Live. And today we have a very great show ahead of us. We're going to have special guest, Teri McMinn, who played in cult classic Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She was the character of Pam. Also joining us today will be Dr.Destruction, the horror host and radio host of Big Top Radio, and he'll be joining us later on. And also Lilith Lovecraft will be joining us. I'm joined by my host, Lucien Toombs.
Good evening.
And also joined by Peter Alden.
What's up, guys?
Well, tonight we have a very great show ahead of us, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a cult classic from the 70s. And that movie impacted a lot of us as horror fans and also in film alike. And what can you have to say about this film that when you first saw it? What about you, Peter?
The one thing that comes to mind with Texas Chainsaw Massacre is that when done rightly artistically, anything can be done perfect. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the true example of terror. Like I was saying earlier, if you done artistically, it can any subject matter can be redeemed.
And what about you, Lucien?
It is sort of a predecessor, I would say, to Rob Zombie's film, in that very gritty, very realistic, like, the setting didn't seem polished like some films do. I mean, this is dirty, gritty, nasty. So you could say, well, this is like, so, I mean, that's the kind of thing that really takes it's a story for you there.
Well, me watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time, and I remember being a kid and it was out on video. I still have my VHS copy from when Wizard Video put it out. That's one of the first releases was through Wizard Video. But I remember my mother and father wouldn't let me watch the film until quite later. They said it was too violent. But when I got a chance to watch the film, I didn't really see so much of the violence that I was anticipating. I did see the brutality and the way they shot the film, but I was expecting like chainsaw, heads flying everywhere, arms flying everywhere, and I mean when you hear the words Chainsaw Massacre, that's what you expected when you're a little kid watching this film. But I didn't see any of that. But instead I seen a great story. If you're a horror fan, you'll understand what I'm saying by great story. I think Tobe Hooper, when shooting that film, he went into ways with the cinematography, the directing, and the way the claustrophobic feel was when you're watching that film in some of those scenes. And tonight's go ahead, Peter.
I think, like, for me, I mean, when I first saw the film, I thought it was actually real. When I first saw the movie, I think I was like 6 or 7 years old or 8 years old, something like that. My sister had rented it, and she had like some slumber party, you know. And then, you know, the videotape was out. I put it in, and I actually thought I was watching a real life movie. It didn't have that film feel to it. And when I was watching over the weekend, I was doing some more research on the film, and I mean, I consider it one of the best horror films of all time. There's this certain realism that really sticks out in the film still, and I think what's done so masterfully with Hooper is, and how he creates that realism, is mainly due to the environment. I mean, from what I've read, there was grueling filming conditions. Supposedly, the heat was so unbearable that it was, at times, people were fainting. And supposedly, and this is like word around the campfire, Tobe Hooper was very, very hard on his actors. And I think that was very paramount for the film to get that kind of performance, because I don't think if you had those kind of factors, I don't think you would have had the same kind of performances and the same kind of tone and realism in the film.
And I agree with that, Peter. I mean, the heat was a big factor in that. I listened to the late Gunnar Hansen's interviews, him talking about the outfit he wore as Leatherface. They couldn't get a dry clean, they couldn't get a wash, so that from the heat and the sweat and everything, it was terrible to be around. But with Texas Chainsaw Massacre and tonight's guest, Teri McMinn, Teri McMinn is a very accomplished actress. She has done theatrical work. She has done other films, but I mean, she really has that talent, and I'm really happy that we're going to be having her on the show today and hear her points of view of her career, not just of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but of her professional acting career.
I'm pretty stoked, to be honest. I mean, like I said earlier, Texas Chainsaw Massacre would probably be up there as like my top 5 favorite horror films. So just getting the insight, how the shoot was like, how the relationship was like with the actors, like was there crazy tension with the actors? Like imagine, you know, you're in a set, it's uncomfortable, it's hot, and you're around these people for 20 days. I would just love to hear the insight in all of that.
And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of it today. And joining us right now is the actress, the beautiful Teri McMinn. How you doing, Teri?
Hi. Good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, thank you. And we welcome you to K&S Society TALK Live. I'll introduce you to the other hosts on the panel. We have Lucian Toombs.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
And we also have Peter Alden.
What's up, Teri?
Hi.
I used to have a big crush on you.
Oh, no.
I have to admit I had one also.
Well, that's very flattering. Thank you so much.
But Teri, tell me about being raised in Houston and how you fell in love with the arts.
Well, even as a child, I was watched television, you know, growing up, and I loved movies, loved films. So I watched the movies every day that, I could. And as I grew into my teens, I started taking speech and elocution, and I studied privately a bit for a couple of years. And then when I got into the ninth grade, I took a speech class, and we were assigned to do 4 different kinds of speeches. And one of them was persuasive, one was after dinner, that sort of thing. And the persuasive speech that I did was on the death of Medgar Evers. He had just been shot in front of his children at his home. And I was a big civil rights person growing up in a very racist atmosphere. And when I finished the speech, there were only about 20 people in the class, but all of them were very moved. The teacher walked up to me with tears streaming down her face and said, "Oh, have you ever thought of going into drama?" And I said, "Oh, yes." So from that moment on, I was going to UIL tournaments and representing my school and, going to state competition and winning all kinds of those kinds of awards and duet acting and poetry reading and all the stuff that you do. And so that was my intro.
Wow, very impressive.
It was fun.
And was
I was addicted to it.
Was that your first attempt at theater? And
that was what I did in high school, and then when I graduated high school, I was given a scholarship to Trinity University in San Antonio, but it was too late to go to Trinity for that term, so they had me go to the Dallas Theater Center, which the director at Trinity was also the director of the Dallas Theater Center, Paul Baker. And they did very innovative, wonderful shows. And so I moved from Houston to Dallas, and they worked us from 8 in the morning until 11 at night, with a break for dinner and break for lunch. But we worked just really hard. And so that was a terrific introduction. And I got to do all their leads in their children's shows, and I also got to do assist the assistant director of the theater and props and costuming, and we took classes every day. So it was a tremendous experience for me.
Any favorite roles?
I'm sorry?
Any favorite roles?
Well, let's see. I played Slewfoot Sue in The Legend of Slewfoot Sue. And a couple of, children's plays when I was there. And I really mainly was understudying and doing things of that nature. Edward Herman, the terrific actor who passed away, I think it was last year, was one of my teachers there. And so I just was studying mainly there. And then after that, I went to St. Edward's University, where I did leads in all their shows. And that was terrific because they called in LA people. So I was doing, I worked with all kinds of different people. One of them that was really great that I was doing simultaneous to filming Chainsaw was with Peter Breck from the Big Valley. I was doing Lizzie and the Rainmaker. So we were getting rave reviews and standing ovations, and it was a terrific cast. It was just a terrific experience. And various other roles. I've actually got all of the pictures up in on Pam's page, so can't remember what the name of the album is. Way Back When, maybe. I think it's called Way Back When. But anyway, I did that for about a year, and then I was cast in Chainsaw out of the blue. That sort of fell into my lap, and after that, I then started doing dinner theater. So I worked with June Allison, Andy Devine, different people. So that was great. Yeah, I was just watching today. I was watching Who Shot Liberty Valance, and I didn't realize all the people that were in there. But Andy has a beautiful role in the film. And
great movie.
yeah, it's Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne and who's the woman from Psycho, the sister in Psycho, Verna. Anyway,
Verna Miles.
Yeah, that's right. And then John Carradine has a wonderful character role toward the end. But and Lee Marvin is fantastic as Liberty Valance. I didn't realize, but it's directed by John Ford, who cast Andy also in several of his films. One was in Stagecoach. And I read just the other day he had cast Andy Devine in Stagecoach because Andy could drive a 6-horse team. And that's what he needed in the film. So that was great.
Great trivia.
What we do is we're going to, I know all of us on this panel are really huge fans of your work, and I know all of us hosts have a lot of questions for you in that, not specifically towards Texas Chainsaw, but about you as an actress. Also, we have a lot of Chainsaw questions as well. But Peter, you have some questions?
Yeah, I have a question, and this is kind of staying on the theater topic since we're on it. What would you find the main difference in acting between theater compared to cinema? And which one do you find harder personally?
Well, I actually loved stage, so that was something I could have, if I stayed with it, done for the rest of my life. I loved it so much because you interact, you hear the audience responding to your performance, and you just feel that you're in a position to persuade, and I feel like that was where my passion was, my heart was. I can remember doing the tax scene in The Rainmaker and hearing these women just off to the side of the theater in the Ramp, and I heard them go, oh, and sigh. And it was, you're still in character, but you can hear those things. And so I really enjoyed that. As far as filming, there was a lot of sitting around and waiting, and it was terribly hot, which I never had to be really hot when I was on stage. So I would just say that getting to dig into characters and all, I love theater. I love live theater.
What about you, Lucien? Do you have a question for Miss McMinn?
Well, I just wanted to, from what you said, because I've done, a movie or two and theater as well. And the nice thing about theater is you get that immediate response. I mean, if you, like you said, if you do something that sort of touches the audience, you hear the or if you do a laugh line, you can hear the laughter, and especially to that applause at the end when the audience has really liked your performance. I mean, if you could find some way to bottle that, alcohol sales and the illegal drugs would just go, disappear from the face of the earth.
Yes, that applause at the end does sound good, doesn't it? It's and when they get to their feet, they're applauding. It's, whoa, that's effervescence, and I think also getting to go in every night and perfect things that you've been doing, but then you find a new way and you just try and slide those in. And I I found that very challenging, and your heart is in your throat, and then you take a big deep breath and you gulp and you go out and you do it, and I loved that. Every night, getting something new and working off of other people doing something, and getting to work with really talented people. I mean, as much as June was not in her right mind when I was doing the play, she was very, very vulnerable kind of a person. But she's talented, she's just innately talented. So you'll always learn something.
Yeah, and especially since she was in the old studio system there at MGM for all those years.
Right. And as a child, I grew up just adoring her work. So it was and the show was first set for 9 weeks, and it was extended to 11 weeks, and then it was to 13 weeks. So, that was a very interesting learning experience for me.
And not to mention sort of a mixed blessing, too, because, like you said, she was having problems at the time, and you think, okay, well, we're going to go another couple more weeks, and, you're sort of, guarded because you're thinking, okay, well, I've got my end things covered, can she keep up with that?
Yeah, you never knew what line you were going to get. And the wedding scene was of 4 or 5 pages, and she would skip around, and it was incredibly challenging in that regard. So I was ready. When the 13 weeks were up, I was done. I was ready for my next challenge,
Oh.
But, but it was fine. And I'm sure if she had felt better at that time, then it would have been an even better experience. But I took it for what it was, and just worked as hard as I could every night to try and keep her on cue.
And we're joined by our 4th host for the evening, Brandon Levake. He was running a little bit late, but he's here. Brandon, we're speaking to actress Teri McMinn. Did you have a question for Teri?
Hi, Teri. How you doing?
Hi, good. And sorry, what was your first name again?
My name is Brandon.
Okay, thank you. I'm doing good.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I do have a question for you. I want to know what your favorite play is, and I want to know why it's your favorite play, because I understand from what I've heard that you enjoy plays very much and that you've done in a few yourself as well as a few movies. So I'd like to know what your favorite play is.
Well, I love doing Our Town. I did Emily in Our Town, and I think it's just a beautifully written play. And some of her lines are they stay with me. I still love them. And I thought that The Rainmaker was one of the best experiences I've ever had. And getting to play Lizzie was remarkable. And I was just so fortunate because she's just a beautiful character. All the characters in it are fantastic. And Peter Breck played Starbuck, and so he was perfect. But the guy that played my father in the play, everyone was just so good at what they did. So it was a joy. Every night I would look forward to getting to go to the theater and to do that role again, And I remember the opening scene, and I was singing, "Bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves," tripping down the stairs, coming on. So that was a lot of fun. So I would say that those were my 2 favorites that I did. I worked on a lot of shows at the Dallas Theater Center that were good. I was in a Moliere play, and we did Marat Sade. And I did the props, actually, for Marat Sade, which you would think would not be much, but that's a tremendously huge prop show. And I've learned so much. It's great for actors to get to do all the other things, you know, to work on the sets, to work on the props, to get to work on costumes. And I got to do all of that. Plus, you know, later on I was able to direct a few scenes and different things. So I just think it's really good to get to do all of those different things because everything makes a difference in the show.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So where did you do theater?
Oh,
are you?
I'm sorry. You speaking to Brandon or?
Yeah, Brendan.
Oh, I've been to a few plays. I've never actually done theater. I'm a musician.
I thought you said you had. Oh, okay.
No. I said that Lucian does theater. Yes, Lucian does many plays.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I am actually a musician.
One of the strangest roles I did was they had Jonathan Harrison. He was the guy that was on My Favorite Martian, a TV series, which may be before all of your time, but at any rate, and I think it was in the 60s. And I played it was my first role at St. Edward's, and they didn't have anything else open, but they had one role, and it was for Judy, the prostitute, who turns tricks in a graveyard. At the time, I had a motorcycle. And so the director had me drive my motorcycle up to the door and rev the engine, and then I'd come in with my helmet, and I'd be there to turn my trick. So that was kind of one of the most fun roles I can remember.
Now, on the stage, what was the difference between studying as an actor in New York as opposed to Houston, and what was the main difference? And also, do you think all actors should start in theater first before moving on to feature films?
No. I mean, I think that, you know, like, what's her name, Jennifer Lawrence. I don't know if she'd ever done a play before she got cast in films, but she's a terrific actress. Normally, I do find that I've been drawn to people that, you know, started in theater and studied. I think it's a tremendous way to get to study. And also, you get all that response. So I took lots and lots of classes in L.A. and in Texas. When I got to New York, I really didn't get into my acting the way I would want to, but I did go to a lot of plays, because there you can actually get to go to plays for free and get to see plays for free. And so I did that my first year in New York. And on the side, I was managing a restaurant and doing leg and foot modeling. So that was my main thing in New York. But I would say that my LA classes were also really great. And I took a few of Stella Adler's classes. And so I really enjoyed studying in LA. And I studied, you know, in fact, Dee Wallace was in one of my classes with me. And yeah, she sat right next to me one day. She said, "Hi." She was very friendly and very sweet.
She's a wonderful woman. Does she always have that upbeat personality in person?
Yes, and I love her work. Very talented.
She's gonna be on the show later on in the new year, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, she's a lovely girl. She goes to a lot of conventions.
Now, with the theater, after you got out of the theater, well, you probably didn't get out of the theater, but then when you went into motion picture, Texas Chainsaw, that was your first film, wasn't it? Your first feature role?
That was the only film I did. So after Chainsaw, I did more dinner theater. And then I moved to Los Angeles and started studying there, and I did what they call, you do shows, and you're a member of Equity, but you do Equity waiver shows. so that you can get your work seen by different people. And so that was what I mainly did in LA, but I ended up just waiting on a lot of tables and getting lost in that kind of life and going to a lot of auditions and things. But Chainsaw was, my first film, and I didn't really want to do horror because horror back then was just a step above softcore porn. It wasn't, it was B movies, was non-union, and I was really wanting to get into all the unions. At that time, you know, if you were a serious actor, you didn't do non-union work. You shot for all union work, and you wanted to get your Actors Equity card, your AFTRA card, and your Screen Actors Guild card. But I went to rehearsal one day at St. Edward's, and the director, Ed Mangum, called me into his office, and he said, you know, we've gotten a call for you. Some people saw your picture in the paper. We'd just done a play with Frank Sutton, the guy that was Sergeant on the Gomer Pyle series. And he did several good roles in films, too. But anyway, they had seen my picture in the paper and had asked if I would come and read for them. So that was how I got into Chainsaw. But I didn't want to do it.
What was your first reaction on that script?
Well, I didn't really see the script. I just read a couple of things for them. And to be honest, I just couldn't wrap my mind around this whole concept that they, you know, briefly explained to me about meat hooks and chainsaws and Leatherface. And, you know, I was thinking I would be doing Moliere and Edward Albee and all these other serious plays and different things. And, you know, I liked horror. I'd seen a lot of horror as a kid growing up, but I just hadn't thought about being in a horror film. And at first I just really didn't think I wanted to do it. And then a friend of mine said, Teri, go ahead, just do it, you know. So I actually called them and I told them, you know, I'd really like to be in your film. Could you read me again? And they said, yeah. Why don't you come over tonight at such and such a time and wear some shorts? And my radar went up really high, and I thought, oh, God, I don't know.
Right. Just be a little concerned.
Right. I didn't know them at all.
Yeah.
You know, some of the people that worked on the project did know one another. Marilyn knew Toby. I think she and Bill Vale had studied together at UT. Anyway, some of them knew one another, and Alan Denziger had worked with him before. But I went ahead. I put on my shorts, and I got on my bicycle. It was about a half a mile from where I lived in Austin. I lived near the campus, and they were just a short distance away. And I got on my bicycle and arrived, and I read for them, and they offered me the part.
Wow.
Peter did a lot of homework on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that, like I said, he was a huge fan. Peter, you have a question? Peter? Guess we lost Peter for the moment. What about you, Lucille?
I'm here,
okay.
guys. Sorry.
He's here.
I was just curious, is there a lot of rehearsal time before shooting?
No.
So there was absolutely no rehearsal time. And my second question was, talk to me about the scene with all of you guys in the van, because I could just imagine you guys are shooting a scene in a van. It must have been scorching hot. Talk to me about those conditions and tell me if you felt the tension helped the scene, or was it very difficult for you to endure?
It was brutal. It was very hot, and those scenes we filmed for 3.5 days, And the first 2 days you had the 5 actors, and then you had the director, the sound man, and Daniel Pearl all in the back of the van. So you've got 8 people in. And then the last day and a half, we have the hitchhiker added, so that's 9 people in the van. And you have to have the windows rolled up because you can't have any road noise. And I don't even know if the van had an air conditioner. I don't think it did. But so, you'd film for 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, and then they'd stop and open the door, and we'd just all fall out of the van. It was so hot. So those 3 days, I can tell you they were difficult days, and there was a lot of tension just because we wanted to finish it. We wanted to get it done. And often we would get new sides in the morning, or we would be ad-libbing some of the lines. And I guess we worked more with Kim if we worked on things, but honestly it was Bill and I, who played Kirk, my boyfriend, who would get together and do the background on our characters, and we would make acting decisions together. And he was a lot of fun to work with. But as a cast, we were all very, very close. We all hung out together waiting for the shots, waiting for clouds to pass, waiting for things to happen. So.
What about you, Lucy?
Yeah, like you said,
do you have a question?
Yeah, like you said earlier, a lot of sort of sitting around and waiting, and
a lot.
This past summer, the movie It became like the highest-grossing horror film of all time, and Bill Skarsgård, who played Pennywise the Clown, made it a point to stay away from the kid members of the cast, so that when he would appear, they'd be shocked and surprised. Did you encounter anything like that with, like, the hitchhiker or Leatherface?
Well, because Ed only filmed with us on the days that we were in the van, I really didn't get to know Ed while we were filming at all. I think the day that we shot my meat hook scene, everyone was there. And that was more like doing theater, because when we finished that scene, everyone was so quiet. They were wide-eyed, and I think that day we really felt that we had something finally, because a lot of it had been disconnected and a little bit chaotic. And, I wasn't close to, I wasn't really close to the director during filming, more into the technical end of things, I would say. And Kim would give us our new sides because he was doing the writing. But I knew Gunnar because he had been my ex-boyfriend's roommate previous a year before we were filming, and he and I despised one another because he was always trying to get my boyfriend to go out and drink and find chicks, and I wasn't so happy about that. So when I finally broke up with old George, I was thinking, I'll never have to see Gunnar again, happy about it. And then I went into the trailer. They had an RV that we never got to really go into. It was sort of, they used it as an office or something. But Kim Hinkle said, "Teri, come here. I'd like you to meet Leatherface." And I got even with a guy who was as tall sitting down as I was. I just saw this hulking figure in a banquette sitting with his back to me, and I got even with him, and we both looked at one another and went, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" So that was actually very funny.
So you had reason. You had reason to hate.
Nah, no. We went out for coffee. We put all that behind. He was probably mad at George by that time too. So so we just got on with it, and Gunnar and I did very well shooting our scenes together. I mean, you're an actor. I don't need somebody to stay away from me for me to be able to do a scene and pretend I'm afraid of them. He's a 300. At that time, he weighed 350 pounds.
Wow.
I weighed 1/3 of that. So it was, I'd trained for years. I'd been training since I was 14. So I had 7 years under my belt, and I was ready to go. I mean, I was ready to stop waiting on clouds to pass, and I was ready to work and do some action scenes. So although it was very hard filming those scenes, all of those in the house scenes were physically very, very difficult. But I think we got a lot on film, and so
yeah, that
I'm
meat
fine
hook
about
scene.
it now.
Yeah, that meat hook scene is very, very intense. Yeah.
Yeah, well, also the way they cut it was great. I thought they edited it beautifully with the bare back coming toward the hook, and then they just flashed to the front of him dropping her on the hook. So I thought that editing made that scene. But the day before we were going to film the meat hook scene, Toby called me aside and he said, "Teri, have you thought about what you might do on the meat hook? What do you?" And I said, I did think about it, Toby. And I thought, if the meat hook didn't hit her in a strategic point in her spine to cause her not to be able to move, that she might try and just get off the hook. And he said, yeah, let's go with that. So that's what we went with. And to be honest, those scenes, other than having to wear a parachute strapping harness underneath my costume, which was awkward and a little bit, and it didn't take us that long to do those scenes. Literally, we started around 8 or 9, and we were done by noon. By the time lunch came at noon, we were done. And I just remember everyone just standing there, and when they let me off the hook, I looked up, and everybody was going, "Whoa, wow," ooh, that. It was a very powerful moment for all of us to get that out of the way. But one of the scenes that was really funny that we shot was the one where Pam's in the deep freeze. And, she, if you'll recall in the theater, that's when she pops out of the deep freeze, when Jerry hears her knocking on the deep freeze. And
like a good jump scare.
Yeah, right. And I thought it was just so dumb. In fact, I finally said to Toby, because they had me in the deep freeze, and the person that was supposed to get the dry ice said that it would look like it was cold, when they opened it, had not brought the dry ice. So they handed me a Coke bottle to stick between my legs inside the thing. And they had me light a cigarette and just puff it, and Toby would be outside going, "Okay, is it smoky in there, Teri?" I'd go, "Yeah, I think so." And he'd say, "Okay, action," and then I would just fling myself out of the deep freeze, fling myself over the side, sort of. And I'd had enough of doing that, and I just said, "Oh, Toby, this is so stupid." And little did I know that would be the scene that everybody would just come out of their chairs, I was wrong.
And what about you, Brandon? You have a question?
Yes.
Brandon?
Yeah, I apologize. Sorry. Yes. So I'm curious, because after I saw that movie, I mean, he definitely is a big guy. I'm curious. So what was it like to work with Leatherface Gunnar Hansen, like as an actor, and like I'm also curious as to like how he got into that role. Like how did he prepare for the role? Did he stay in character during the shooting? Like, because that's kind of like a crazy role to play.
Gee, I'm not really sure because he was just grunting a lot, and
yeah, but just...
I honestly can't tell you that. He said later, many years later, 40 years later, that he had done some character studies of people in the school, in somewhere. I can't remember. But, I thought he did a wonderful job as Leatherface. But, a lot of it was, okay, start down here and you're trying to get away from him. There was no, and what's Leatherface thinking? There was none of that. None of that.
Yeah, because he really didn't have much dialogue, is for sure. But just the way his motions and just his manic ways and the way that he would just kind of just act insane, through his body. I didn't know if maybe he had some way of kind of getting into it, like if he had to hype him up, he had to hype himself up.
Yeah, we just, it would be just Gunner, and then we'd start the scene and we'd just do our jobs. So I can't tell you that there was a lot of deep character thought or anything on either of our parts. It's just a matter of he's trying to get me back to a certain area to be where I'm supposed to be so he can do whatever he has going on, and I'm just trying to get away from him. So, but when you're trying to make it look realistic, you have to really fight them. And so doing that,
especially
I ended up... Yeah, so at the end of that day, I had lost my voice by 8 o'clock at night. It's getting darker, and they're trying to wrap up the last shots, and I can really tell you I was exhausted. I had no voice. They gave me Jack Daniels to drink out of a bottle so that I could get something to coat my throat just to get those last couple of scenes. And I went home, and I couldn't even turn over in bed because I'd been fighting a 350-pound man for my life for 10 hours,
Oh,
So I had to, the understudy had to go on for me and Lizzie, and that broke my heart because that's what I really, every day while we'd finish filming, and I'd just be jazzed to get to go and do Lizzie at night. So it was pretty much an actor's dream, filming all day and doing stage all night in a role that you love. So those were fun times.
And since the film had such a realistic feel to it, was there any moments of genuine fear?
Nope, not really for me. I mean, I can suspend my imagination, and that's pretty much what I did. I can't tell you that I was literally afraid. I was glad that they never got the chainsaws, were never near me, because I think that was, and they were just lucky that nothing happened, because I think that was probably, fairly have to worry about any of that. The only time I really was in pain was after my scenes with Gunner, and that was, I literally could not walk for a couple of days. I mean, just to turn over in bed was a monumental effort. It was very, very tough. But the time when I kicked over the bucket, that one, Toby had I kicked over the bucket, and it had a serrated. It was one of those. What do you call those kind of buckets? It's a steel bucket, and so it had an edge on it, a really sharp edge, and that's what hit my shin every time I would trip on it. And so Toby had us do that 13 different times, and by the end of it, my shin was black and blue and bleeding, and it I was ready for that. I said, I think we've got it. Don't you think so, Toby?
Talk about suffering for your art, yeah.
Yeah. That's when I fall into the bone room.
Now, Peter, you have a question.
Yeah, following up on Keith's question, I was talking to the crew earlier, and I was saying when I first saw the film, I actually thought it was a real life movie. And I want to know, as an actress, to create that realism of fear, where did you have to take yourself as an actress? Did you have to draw back from past experiences, or how were you basically able to create that genuine fear in your role?
Well, I just had been trained for a long time to learn to feel and express things. And if you imagine that you've been abducted by someone, and you're they're wearing a mask, and they're 350 pounds, and they're grabbing you, it's pretty easy to imagine that would be frightening. And if you'll recall, she even gets away from him a couple of times. So that builds a lot of suspense, that she's able to break away from him for just that moment until he gets her back. So I would just say to you that, it's just suspending your imagination. And I'm good at that. I can do that.
And what about you, Lucian?
Oh gosh, forgive me. I'm having a senior moment right now. Did you get a chance to see this film once it was finished? I mean, was there a premiere that you were invited to, or?
No, I didn't get invited to the premiere. I don't know. I was in Dallas, so I was only a couple of hours away. But Bill didn't go. I didn't go. I think only Marilyn, maybe Ed Neal, and Alan were there with Toby, and some of the crew might have been there. But, yeah, I was not at the premiere. In fact, I remember I was working, waiting tables in a place called H.P. Cassidy's in Dallas on Greenville Avenue. And one of the bartenders said, "Hey, Teri, weren't you in that horror movie, like Chainsaw or something?" And I said, "Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre," because, the working title had been Head Cheese, and then they changed it to Texas Chainsaw Massacre over the years since I had seen them. And I said, "Yeah," and they said, "Well, I saw a trailer for it last night on TV, and you were in the whole trailer." And I said, "Oh, that's not possible," because, I was the second female lead. But sure enough, I was in it, and nothing could have astounded me more, because Andy Devine had actually said, "Oh, Teri, that damn thing will never come out of the can." Because, at that time it was film. And it literally was in the can. There was no digital anything. And Andy had, he'd been in Hollywood for years. He'd been through it all. And he just thought it was a low-budget film, and it was so controversial. So it took 10 years for it to even start to become the cult classic. So by that time, I was no longer an ingenue. I was in my 30s. So that was the way that went. Because when it came out, it was banned across Europe, in the UK. It was banned in the UK for 25 years. You had to see a bootleg copy. It was banned in Italy. It was banned in Spain. It was banned in Sweden. It was banned in France. It was banned everywhere. So it took, time for it to start to become known and to become. In fact, Marilyn, Bill, and I took it off of our resumes at certain points, because you'd walk into someone's office and they'd say, "Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what is that?" So it was an interesting experience.
Oh, I'd imagine
I'm
so.
Sure, I'm sure Brandon has a question, but I'm going to cut in just for a second. How was it working with the great actor Jim Saito?
Jim, I really didn't have scenes with Jim, unfortunately. I just think he's tremendous, and what he brought to the film was, I mean, I love that line that he has, "Look what your brother did to that door," you know. And, I mean, also, I love he just brought humor, you know, the way that he would be deciding whether he should be treating Marilyn that way. I mean, he seemed to go in and out of being crazy. And also that scene at the gas station when so you don't want to take them girls don't want to go out there, you know. And he's got the guy with the bucket following him back and forth to the van, watching the window. I mean, that's hysterical. So I thought Jim was tremendous. I wish I had scenes with him.
What about you, Brandon? What's your question?
So, to my understanding, a lot of movies, some of the greatest parts of a movie or some of the most memorable parts usually come from something that wasn't scripted, just something that came out at the time when the actor was in character. So, like, my question is, were there any times where, like, you needed to improvise or any of the characters kind of needed to improvise, like, just kind of go on the run with it, and that, like, kind of turned out being, like, maybe one of the most iconic parts of the movie, or just times where it ended up working, or times where maybe it didn't work and it took multiple takes because people weren't sure what to do?
I think, you know, we did a lot of improvising. I mean, I can't tell you specific things, but we did improvise along the way a lot. I can't really think of anything that specifically to tell you. It just sort of worked out. We were very dedicated to what we were doing, and everybody took everything very seriously. And, you know, since it was so hot, we just all kind of were comrades in trying to get this project done. And I think Bill and I, you know, we just did a lot of improvising. We pretended that we were secretly married and that sort of thing. But no, they probably did a lot of improvising on the dinner scene, but I wasn't in any of that part, thank goodness. I'm very happy to say my filming was done, and the only thing I can tell you is I'm really glad I had the tiniest costume because I was cooler probably than most everybody else.
Gotta stay cool. It was hot.
Now, I know there's that scene with the wheelchair, and you had Paul Patane, who was playing Franklin, was in a wheelchair. Now, when he was going down the hill, was there truth to that he wanted the cast to go down the hill also before he would? If he was going to do it, he wanted the cast to do it as well. Was there any truth to that?
No, I never heard that. No, he was supposed to, you know, just go down the hill on his own. No, I never heard that part.
Okay, I think that was in one of the commentaries or something. So, Peter, what's your next question for Miss McMinn? I'm sorry, Terry, I keep mispronouncing your last name.
I've been called McGinn all my life. I'm very used to it, either that or Pam.
What's your question, Peter?
I don't think Peter's there.
No, Peter's probably...
I'm here. Sorry, guys. Since we're on the topic of it being such a grueling shoot, do you think that it helped enhance the performances, and do you think it gave that authenticity of it feeling like a real film, like you're really watching something?
But I think that, you know, they happened to get a really talented group of actors. I mean, I thought everyone on the film did a really good job, and the crew was extremely supportive of us. The heat is it's going to be, if it's hot and you're hot, it's hot. And it was 95 to 100 degrees, and if you're inside the van and it's closed up, it's more than 100 degrees because the sun was out. We weren't shooting, in the shade somewhere. The van was running in the heat of the day. So I would say that, that does tend to make people tense. But, like I said, as actors, now Paul stayed in character all the time. But the rest of us, we would kid around and joke and go lay in the hammock and wait till they got their, they had I would say that the crew had difficult times because it was just difficult for them having to shoot, and they had to shoot so much film because Toby had to be sure that he had everything. So that created tension more for them than for the cast. But as I said, we, as the cast, I remember us all getting along and kidding. I mean, the only one that stayed in character was Paul. And I never really got to know Paul. I understand from everyone else that he's a jolly, lovely fellow. But I moved to Dallas right after we finished shooting within 2 months. And so I never got to know him. But I think that it does have that gritty feel, and it's sort of almost like a documentary to me when you watch it, I think.
Then what was your
Yes, I
first
agree
reaction
with
when you
that.
actually saw the film? Like, what did you think? Did you think it came across effective? Did you see it as garbage? Were you proud of it? Were you ashamed of it?
When it first came out, I was not happy about them shooting the scene with my red shorts from behind. I was this was 1973. They had asked me after they had us come in and sign for deferred money. After the first 10 days, they ran out of money. And so, by that time, I thought I was just going to be gone for 2 weeks filming it. And so at that point, I had lost my regular job, my waitressing job, which is what paid my rent. And, they kept us tied up for another 4 weeks to finish it. So I would say that when it first came out, I was not really impressed, especially with my own work. I beat myself up pretty much for 35 years. And finally, in 2008, Gunnar had been coming over to my flower shop to get me to sign pictures that he would take and sell at the conventions because he was, he kind of made a career out of Leatherface and enjoyed it. And finally, I was living in Los Angeles managing hotels, and he called me and he said, "Hey, Teri, you need to really come out and do these conventions." I said, I don't. I really was happy just having put my acting in a drawer and just I enjoyed business. I had several businesses and ran other people's businesses and made people very rich. So I finally decided, okay, I'll go to a convention. I'd heard that people were angry with me because I wasn't coming out, but I had never liked my work in the film, and people had a couple of parties over the years for me, like a chili party and all of this. I never thought I was great in the film. It wasn't something I would sit around and say, "Oh, I'm the girl on the meat hook." You would not know that I wouldn't mention it. It would be other people that would find out, and they go, "You were in that film? You were in that film?" And so finally in 2008, I went to my first convention. I did that 20-minute interview for the re-release of in the Blu-ray, and had a lot of fun doing the interview. And the guy that was my agent at the time said, "Oh, Teri, your scenes are taught in directing classes across the world." And I was dumbfounded. I said, "Oh, no way. That is not possible." So I was just kind of Googling things at that time, and I went online and he said, Google YouTube. So I crept onto YouTube, afraid that people could tell I was watching my scenes. And I watched my scenes, with Gunnar and that, and I went, "Oh, Teri, that's not so bad." And then eventually I was like, "Oh, hon, you did fine, So I began to embrace Pam. And I went to my first convention, and I didn't stop signing for 3 days. I was floored. And Marilyn had come over to the table, and she said, "So, what do you think?" And I said, "Wow, can we do this every weekend?"
Now, I'm gonna jump ahead of Lucien here. I apologize, Lucien. But I'm gonna give you it's like a 3-part question, but it's all summed into one. Working with Tobe Hooper, how hard did he push the actors to get his vision across of what he wanted? And also, how many days was the shoot? And now with all the remakes coming out and all the sequels coming out, what do you think of them?
Well, I just think the first one is it's the one that's in the Museum of Modern Art. It's the one that's the storyline really makes sense. It's for me, it's totally different than the franchise, where they did the other ones. It just I think some of the acting in the other ones is fine, but I really think that ours is in the Museum of Modern Art. It's in the AFI Film Archives. It's in, it's a different film, and I just think it really captures everything. I thought they had some not great storylines in some of the other ones, and the timeline in 3D was 30 years off. And that's when I actually decided to write Pam Lives, because everybody had been saying to me at all the conventions, I always wondered what happened to Pam, and they loved her character so much. And so I began to write, and when I wrote Pam Lives Part 1, people just, I kind of shyly put it up on my public personal page, and people went nuts for it. They loved it, and they said, "When are you going to write Part 2?" And that's when I made Pam get her own page, and I wrote Part 2, and people, I'm actually out now. I've sold, about 100 copies of the 3 stories, so that's been a lot of fun.
And Peter, you had a quick question. Peter?
I'm back here, sorry.
Peter.
Later on in your career, you're involved in a movie called Cousin Sarah. Tell me about working. You look at the cast here, and it's pretty much an all-star cast. Were there any moments where you felt intimidated?
They never got the money to do that. Cousin Sarah, they never got their money to do it.
Oh, wow.
No, they never did.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
looking at
been
the
going
cast
on
here.
for 5 years.
There's Linda Blair, Tom Sizemore.
Oh, well, maybe they did it, and I don't know about it, but I have no idea. Send me the link.
Yes, I will. And one more question. Since you're such a student of the game, are there any actors that you draw for inspiration?
Well, I love a lot of good actors, but I, who doesn't? I mean, I can't say I don't love Meryl Streep. I do. But growing up, I would say Barbara Stanwyck was one of my favorites. I've always loved Jenna Rowland. She was a wonderful actress. I love Jessica Lange. Lots of great actors. What's the Joel Cohen's wife? You know who I'm talking about. Come on, somebody knows. Joel Cohen's wife, Blood Simple.
Really good movie too.
Fargo. Anyway.
We'll find out for you. I know someone's probably Googling it right now.
I just saw her the other night in an interview. She's fabulous. And she's got the new film, 3 Billboards, out with Sam Rockwell. Yeah. Anyway, I love her. She's fabulous.
I'll Google that very quickly. Yeah, but I know who you're talking about, and her newest film does look really good. Now, Teri, I told you when we first talked on social media about doing this interview, we were working a guideline, but I want to do closing with about you. After 35 years, are you coming back into the film market to be in more films? And also, what are you doing now? Is there anything great that you want to promote? I know Pam's page is doing good, and I have you sent me a couple of links to that I'm really anxious to read. But what are you up to now in the business? You doing
the
any
next
films?
thing I'm going to do in a couple of months, I'm going to do the New Jersey Horror Con, and I'll be announcing on Pam's page that, and I'm going to be doing some Texas shows next fall. And I'll probably be doing some more writing, but people can check on Pam's page in her notes, and you can read Pam's stories for free. I do have a great offer where you get 2 5x7s, an original drawing of Pam escaping, and that a friend of mine did for me. So I'll be doing, more writing and stuff. I just got back from Birmingham in the Birmingham HorrorCon in the UK. And John was with me. We had a great time. And then I visited friends in Belgium at their new home and saw a bit more of the UK. And then I went to do a show in Germany called The House of Horrors and met just all kinds of wonderful people, fans that had always wanted to meet us and hadn't been able to. So that was a tremendous lot of fun. So that's what I've been doing mainly. That and running Pam's page. People will say, no, is this really Pam?
Teri, like I said, you're a wonderful actress. And we don't just notice you just for Texas Chainsaw. We notice you for your whole career and everything you did, especially on stage and the theatrics and such. And I really appreciate you coming on our show today. And I did find out that name. You meant Frances McDormand. McDormand.
Frances McDormand.
And she's great at 3 Billboards, if you've seen it. 3 Billboards, she's probably going to get nominated this year.
I bet she does. I've watched all the trailers, and I saw she and the director and Sam Rockwell on an interview the other night, and it was terrific. So I hope she does. But thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate your inviting me to the show. And you do great
Thank
PR.
you.
Thank you.
I'm really impressed. Yeah, if you ever want me to share anything, just send it to me, and I'll make Pam put it on her page.
Okay. Thank you, Teri. And you have a wonderful evening and a very happy holiday.
All right. Merry Christmas. I'm going to say it. It's okay if I say happy holidays and Merry Christmas, okay?
Merry Christmas. You could say.
Yep. Okay. Merry Christmas. Happy
All right,
holidays.
Guys.
Have a
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
See you later,
Bye-bye.
Teri.
And she was such a great guest. And we're going to be joined right now by two other special guests for the evening. They are both horror hosts. One of them is Wisconsin's longest-running horror host, Dr.Destruction, and the other is Lilith Lovecraft. And how you doing, guys? Welcome to K&S Society TALK Live.
Hello. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. And Doctor, I've been on both of your shows, the Dr. Destruction's Big Top Radio, and it's an awesome show. And I really thank you for coming on our show. And I wanted to discuss about your careers and very briefly, Dr. Destruction, Lilith, horror hosting. Let's start with that. Longest running horror host in Wisconsin. And that is something to be very proud of.
Pretty impressive.
Oh, Crimson Theater. It's the Crimson Theater is the longest running show. I'm just on it, but yeah, as far as I know, the longest running show. It's been going into the 17th season.
And what brought both of you to horror hosting? We'll start with you, Doctor, and then we'll go to Lilith.
Well, I was interested in doing it, for a long time in the early 90s, but I was discouraged by a lot of people. And then finally in 2001, I was approached again to do it, and I was like, well, yeah, I always wanted to do that. Doesn't everyone?
And what about you, Lilith?
I was always really attracted to watching horror host programs as a kid. And I knew of Dr. Destruction here in my hometown because I would see him around, and he was always the guy with the hearse and the horror host show. So I always just thought it was a very cool thing, and we managed to actually meet up at one of his band's gigs at a tattoo parlor of all places. And he had a conversation with me, and he realized I actually kind of knew about these films because I'd grown up on the Universal classics and all the Hammer films and all of that. And he actually realized I kind of knew about the films a little bit, and he invited me to do the show, and I kind of haven't left since. I just hang around and hope that he doesn't tell me to go away.
And you both do the Dr. Destruction's Big Top Radio. And how long has that aired on the air?
Well, it's been, for me, it was off and on, back and forth since about 2009. I was on another radio program before that. And then it's been this past, just about a year now that it's been 5 days a week overnight, midnight to 4 a.m., Monday through Friday. So, Lil, she got in on that right at the beginning, and that was like the first time that I did so much radio in a week as well.
And we just got a shout out from John, Texas Deadman, who said to tell Dr. D that the Texas Deadman says congrats on 16 years of Crimson Theater and for his current radio broadcast. He's a huge fan of yours, Doc, and also a huge fan of yours, William.
Good guy.
Oh, he's wonderful.
Now,
yeah, definitely.
I listen to your show. It's from 12 midnight to 4 in the morning, correct? And I am a huge fan of horror hosting, huge fan of music, and also a huge fan of pro wrestling. Lilith, I have to say, you are the most wonderfulest person to listen to talk about professional wrestling.
Well, thank you very much. I actually appreciate that. It's not exactly the easiest thing to be a young female trying to present professional wrestling to a vastly male audience at that time. So I really do appreciate any support.
And you go into a lot of detail, too. I remember the show I was on, you were covering the Attitude Era. So you do a whole, how do you set that up? Do you do you do formats, like certain topics every night? You pick like a generation in professional wrestling?
We usually do, the basic layout is this day in history, because I think it's important to kind of educate people on everything that has happened, both past and modern in history for wrestling, both within the WWE and within all the promotions. And then we move on to any news that's topical, any rumors that are happening in the world of wrestling, because why not? And then we do usually a recap of something like Raw or SmackDown. But when I can have those days where I can throw in history like the Attitude Era, or explaining about different things that Vince McMahon has done or Vince Russo did, those are my favorite nights, because I think it's really cool to share a history of pro wrestling that people listening either remember, and that's what they grew up with or watched when they were like in their 20s, or it's something that they never got to experience, and now they can go look it up and learn about it.
And I agree. And like I say, your segments are very knowledgeable and to the point, and you really go in depth, and I commend you on that, because a lot of hosts don't do that. I mean, you have the hosts like Bruce Pritchard, and you have Jim Cornette that go into detail because they've been in the business.
Yeah.
But for someone who is more like a journalist, as I would consider you being and doing what you're doing, you do a great job at it. And,
Thank you. It's been a lot of hard work to get to this point.
And Doctor, about with your radio show, you have so many great guests on. You have a lot of great musical talent on. What do you plan on doing anything like branching out into anything else in the future with that, or to just stay minimal with what you're doing now?
Oh, we always hope for something like syndication, I suppose, and I definitely like to bring more shows together as far as art and music and things like that. Actually have live performances and get some bands that are touring to come through the area. We have to actually have a very good venue right on I-94 and Highway 50 here that would be easy for any group to pop in, because it's right on the way in between Milwaukee and Chicago and whatnot if their tours going that way. But it's kind of like networking through radio, and the people that are on, they get to know, some of them get to know each other, and I'm certainly, learning about more and more people that are in the industry, and the people that are doing really quality, good work, professional work. And I think that's very enlightening. And personally, that's really the kicker for me, is broadening my knowledge on many subjects.
And I also commend you on that, because like I said, your show is awesome. If any of you out there listening, which I know there's a lot of you, if you get a chance, tune in to Dr.Destruction's Big Top Radio. Did you want to give them a little shout of where the directions to go to? Do they want to go online and listen to you?
Yeah, you just go to WLIP.com and click on shows, and then it'll bring you to bring you to us. But you click on a live link for what is on currently, and then we'll be live on midnight, Monday through Friday, and there's replays for Saturday and Sunday, so that if you, Saturday and Sunday. So Saturday means when the clock strikes 12 at late night on Friday, that becomes Saturday. That's the confusing part sometimes to get guests on or listeners. So it's Central Time as well. So WLIP.com, Central Time, and you can go right to us. And then 9 o'clock on Saturday night, at 9 o'clock Central Time, you can go to KenoshaMedia.org, and our television show is also streamed on there as well.
Great. Like I said, it's a great show, listeners, so tune in. And now we have 3 other hosts that are on the show, K&S Society TALK Live. We have Lucy and Toombs.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
And we also have Peter Alden.
Hello.
Hello.
And
Hello.
we have Brandon LeVake.
Guys.
Hello there.
But I know Peter has a question for you, so turn it over to Peter.
Lilith, following up with Keith's previous question, with wrestling, do you follow any of the New Japan Pro Wrestling, and what's your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are very strong on New Japan. I do not follow it as closely as I would like to right now due to just the amount of wrestling I'm taking in a week. But I have to say that New Japan is the only other place that I would say other than New Japan that's producing a quality product right now would be Lucha Underground. So I really turn to Lucha Underground and New Japan as my main products right now. And I think that New Japan is pushing itself to a place where it can truly compete with the WWE within the next 5 years.
I was at the Long Beach show, and I've been to a lot of wrestling shows. And let me tell you, the energy that was in that room was unmatchable.
I wish I could have made it down to one of those shows. And that's the thing. American audiences, people usually say that because it's a foreign product, American audiences don't buy into it. And I think that's not true anymore. I think with the rise of anime culture and just cross-cultural promotions, we really are accepting of other cultures more in a lot of ways when we're taking in our pro wrestling. So I think that we don't have that cultural barrier anymore. We're able to take in the product. And when you have figureheads like Kenny Omega, who is a foreigner himself, there's a connection there for a lot of people.
And do you think it has such a cult following because it has there's a certain realism to the product, if you know what I mean?
Oh, there's so much more realism to the characters. When you watch WWE, it's kind of like, why are these guys fighting? Because they're big guys with a lot of muscle, and Vince McMahon wants to see big guys with lots of muscle fight. When you watch New Japan, you've got a tiny guy that's fighting because he's arrogant and has to prove himself. You've got all these characters with storylines that you can actually relate to, and they are doing things that are far more impressive than the basic stereotypical formulaic format of a WWE match. So I think it's much more relatable for the average viewer even.
And what's crazy about it, I find, is they don't really cut promos. They're letting their athleticism do the talking, which is very different than, let's say, the American style.
And they're able to tell a story in ring, which is something that I think very few wrestlers within the WWE strive to do at this point.
100%.
Now, Lucien, do you have a question?
Yeah, I got a question for Dr. Destruction. Growing up, was there anything that particularly inspired you to become a horror host? Did you read anything like Famous Monsters of Filmland, or did you watch the Saturday afternoon horror films? Anything of that nature?
Oh, certainly. Always had an interest at an early age. I got the WGN Creature Feature out of Chicago, which presented the Universal horror films. Very soon after, I found out I had two horror hosts in the area, Dr. Cadaverino and, of course, the original Svengoolie. So I had two horror hosts when I was a kid. And at the time, I wish I would have thought more about it actually doing that. I guess actually being on television or in a movie or something to me when I was 9 years old didn't seem obtainable. But it was something that I always related to. I don't even know if the term had been coined yet as of horror host at that time. But I definitely grew up on that and the horror films and Famous Monsters and Aurora model kits and all that stuff that was happening. Yeah, it was an incredible. You were being pushed into the arts, I guess, really, with the whole thing. There was so much artistry going on. It was quite overwhelming, actually.
What about you, Brandon? Do you have a question for either Lilith or Dr. Destruction, or maybe both of them?
Yeah, I have a question for both of you guys. So, being horror hosts, you guys obviously have to have like a love and passion for horror movies. I want to know what each of your favorite horror movies are and why.
Man, that's a difficult one. I would say my
or
favorite...
Or maybe just some of your favorites.
I'll pick two as a modern favorite and a classic favorite. I have to say my classic favorite, I definitely go with The Bride of Frankenstein. Just love that film.
That's an amazing movie.
With that moment when she screams at the monster, it's amazing. And then for a modern horror film, I think the best modern horror film I have seen in the last 10 years, I'm going to go with The Witch.
What about you?
Well, I was just going to say, I get asked that question a lot, and I really, the only answer I can really say is all of the Universal horror films, all of the Hammer films, all of the Roger Corman, Vincent Price combination movies that they did, all the Toho Japanese monster films, Amicus, all of them, and of course Tim Burton's run of movies, pretty much. And probably my most recent favorite horror movie would have to be Shin Godzilla.
One of my favorites.
It's like asking a parent who their favorite kid is.
Yeah, it really is.
And Peter has another question.
Actually, I have a question for you guys. In the 1970s, you were seeing a lot of filmmakers, legit filmmakers like Friedkin, Werner Herzog, Polanski, Kubrick, tackling the genre of horror. Well, nowadays you're seeing the horror genre being made by only horror genre directors. Do you think it affects the genre in a negative way or a positive way?
Well, I think that anytime you have I hope I understand the question correctly, but anytime you have anybody that's supposed to have a hold or do one particular thing and not try different things, I don't know. I think that it shouldn't be limited to people that just supposedly just make horror films all the time, because somebody else that's brilliant that's never made one before might turn it all upside down and make it fresh again. A lot of stuff is really formula. A lot of real formula stuff out there. And for me, having seen so many films and been part of the genre for a long time myself, I can see stuff come and I see the same formulas kind of go over and over again. I mean, if something works, don't fix it, you know. But yeah, I'd rather see some fresh faces in the horror scene, and I think there are some coming up.
But why do you think that, like, directors that say like Paul Thomas Anderson and guys at that caliber are really not tackling the genre?
I personally think the issue right now is the ability to make a straight-up horror film with artistic integrity. Because there's been a lot of films, one example to me would be a Serbian film. That's a straight-up horror film that may be gruesome and gory and appalling to watch in a lot of ways, but it retains its artistic integrity. And I think that's a very difficult thing for American directors to tackle right now. I see it being done by a few indie directors, and I see it done foreign markets. But in the American markets, they're mixing horror with comedy. They're mixing horror with romance. There's films like that. I tried to sit through The Babysitter on Netflix the other day, and it was awful. But they're trying to mix the genres. And as I lose my train of thought, but I think that directors really need to step away from the whole formula that is there and try to produce a whole new product that doesn't follow what has come before, but rather is something new. And when you had the directors of the 70s that were tackling, like, for example, Kubrick, he was able to take his own psychology that he had to his films and redirect it into a horror stance.
But following up on that, like, for example, let's say Mother. It really wasn't accepted by horror fans at all. And It was different. It paid homage to, like, Dordowski, Fulci, yet it was panned by almost most horror fans, and it's very split. The audience was very split. But do you think that films like that don't really work with today's generations, the ones that are a little bit more left field?
I sometimes wonder if this generation isn't demanding. I don't think we know exactly what we want from a horror film in a lot of ways. We expect it to be like the It film was such a tear as well. People claimed it wasn't scary enough, or it was too happy, but you have to understand that not every film can be an all-out gore fest. That's why these films don't work with some of the audiences, but at the same time, you have to kind of see where are your expectations with these films.
Well, like I say, with both of you guys, you both did accomplish and achieved horror hosting. You still are. Radio broadcasting, you still are. Is there anything else you would like to achieve, like maybe go into film or to do your own live show, maybe a series or something? Is there anything you were thinking about doing?
Well, I definitely want to go more to do more films myself. That's something that's like bucket list, if you want to call it, or that's what I would really like to do. I'm really interested in doing some future horror films or other stuff too. It doesn't necessarily have to be a horror film, but I did a few films and now I have the taste for doing movies. Being creepy in a movie.
Yeah, I would like to be able to branch over into more film media possibly, but I also do a lot of modeling right now, and I would like to do some bigger product modeling in the future.
And also, with your knowledge of pro wrestling, would you ever see yourself going into the business itself, whether it's as a commentator, announcer, a character?
If a company like Lucha Underground or New Japan or a smaller indie promotion were to approach me, I would be beyond thrilled. I couldn't lie and say that the wrestling fan in me wouldn't geek out. I just believe that the business is a much more difficult place than a lot of people perceive it to be. And I think a lot goes on behind the curtain, and that can be very difficult. But I would love to go into announcing or possibly work in managerial position, which isn't done very well in modern wrestling, honestly. But if someone could pick up the manager position and do it in the right way, in a modern take, I would love to be that person.
Or any of you pro wrestling promoters out there listening, you heard it right there from Lilith. She'd be more than happy to come in. But we have a question from the chat, from John, saying, I've always wondered how the TV show got started. Did his music play a role? Meaning of you, Dr. Destruction.
Well, it got started because I was asked to do it, and actually about 16 years ago, just last weekend, I started building the set. Part of that set we still use. It's still there, and I've added on to it. But I was well known for my bands being very gothic and doing haunted houses, I suppose. And they thought that it'd be a good idea to kind of stick with my character for that. I wanted to do something completely different. But they thought, the notoriety of those other things, I could bring that to the table to the horror show, and there wasn't nothing like that was going on at the time. And people knew, they missed it. They missed the, the horror host thing. So I was kind of flung into it, and the first couple shows we didn't know what we were doing, and then it kind of turned into a party for a little bit, and then I started finding out that, parents were watching it with their grandchildren, and it was becoming sort of a family night and whatnot, and I thought, well, wow, this is bigger and more important than what I thought. I thought I was just having a good time and cutting up on television and getting to show the movies, which I love. And, then I just said, try to get pull it back a little bit. I always like bringing people on the show, bringing people in as sidekicks or, characters or whatnot. And some of that worked out and some of it didn't. Some of it backfired on me, but, I just kept doing it. It was like it's a dedication to do a new show every week, so it's something new. You don't know when a politician's going to, do something funny, and just to keep it fresh and keep the movies fresh. And there's an audience, so now there's an audience for it, and there's fans of the show, so it's a kind of a responsibility to keep that going. So it's grown over the years. A lot's happened. I mean, a lot has happened. It really needs to be documented. We've lost probably half a dozen people associated with the show have died in that 16-year process. But looking ahead and looking at right now, I think I'm at the best spot right now with the whole thing because the show has grown to what it is now. Lilith being a part of it has really brought a lot of class and depth to the show and the radio show, which is an extension. And so actually, it's a really good spot right now. We're really cool where we're at right now.
And Brandon has another question for you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, guys. So my question is for you, Dr. Destruction. I'm curious as to what inspired you to use the look that you have and the persona that you've taken on? Were there any direct inspirations towards that?
Oh, for sure. I would say it certainly started with Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror, as far as sort of the eye makeup. I mean, it's not exactly that, but that was sort of a makeup that was just what I did. I mean, I don't know if it really started with Rocky Horror or a little probably seeing the British punk images and stuff like that on television of the British punks who looks a lot more gothic really than punk in some ways. And I always liked that black lipstick and that that look, but it just became when I would perform in the band very early on. The first real around '84, that's when I really started doing at that time we called it horror rock. I mean, people call that now, use that label, but it was really like the early days of goth, I guess, and that would be the way I did my makeup for that. So when I started the TV show, I looked like, I looked pretty much like everybody, had seen me around town before doing the haunted houses in the band. And then one of my buddies that I grew up with, from high school actually, that might have had something to do with the cynicism of Dr. Destruction. He had a top hat that he wore on the show, and he played a gypsy character on the show, Lampini. And he just said, well, we got done with the show, and he goes, "Here, you got to have this." And he gave me my first top hat.
And Peter has a quick question.
Well, yeah, I have a quick question for both you guys. I mean, with the horror genre, we always talk about Carpenter, Wes Craven, and all the greats. Who would you guys both consider the unsung heroes of the horror genre?
Well, I'd probably say James Whale or Albert Loon. The director of Dorian Gray from 1945. I mean, probably older directors, but certainly, you put me on the spot and I can't think of a name. Lilith probably can help me out. Our favorite director.
I was actually going to ask you for a name.
Lair of the White Worm.
Yes, I was going to ask you that name. I was going to ask you the name for Salome, Lair of the White Worm. Oh no.
Yeah,
Ken Russell.
Yeah. He's a great director that did a lot of stuff, but those guys, I guess they're just not, it's more of it could almost be in a foreign film classification, I suppose, but it's really not like mainstream. They're not really like mainstream guys. But I really like a lot of stuff they did, or like early Orson Welles direction, who's actually from Kenosha here. Stuff like that. It doesn't necessarily always have to be a horror film, with me. as a matter of fact, as I said before, is actually I'm finding, with all the CGI stuff, I try to watch the King Kong on Skull Island. I couldn't make it through it. Not only did I hate the direction, I hated the buildup of characters. I mean, if Americans are really that stupid as they portrayed in that movie, we're in bad shape. But that aside, I just couldn't get through the CGI. And now, just to totally go the other direction, something like Better Call Saul, where it's just really good actors and there's no effects or nothing going on. It's not even a horror film. And, I like that groove of that. I like that. I guess I like the reality. I mean, I just think these effects have gone far too beyond reality. It's like watching a video game. And I think if you look at the classics, they were really, it was good direction, good storyline, good set building, and great actors. And just having cool sets like the Universal films, I don't know, there's actually, as fantastic as those were, they seem more real than looking at this video game, stuff that's going on. I like CGI in the right places. It's a very cool tool, and it has, can do some really cool stuff, but it just seems like it's the, go-to for everything, and the director sort of loses the reins on the horse, and the CGI, the horse takes over then, and that's what you get.
What about you, Lucian? You have a question?
Yeah, I was reading up on the radio show, and you sort of get into, I guess, what I'd like to call art bell territory there with some of the subject matter. What would you say, both of you, what would you say is the most unusual subject matter you've covered on the radio show?
For me, the most unusual, we've had some weird paranormal people in, but definitely the alien. The alien talk is just a little out there for me. I find it interesting, but it's definitely different.
Well, that now you get into the art bell side. We do cover some of that territory, and it's, I suppose in the beginning, the program manager, the program manager came to us with the idea of going overnight with our show. Okay, it was not our idea. And, and then once, I started thinking about those kind of shows, I figured, well, we reached out to those people. I thought we'd be doing a little more in the beginning than we did. But that's okay. The show found its way on its own. While we have some fantastic stories from Preston Bennett and the multiple books he's done on alien encounters and UFOs, which to me is always a fascinating subject. That's really cool. And the recent Racine paranormal investigators that came through they really delivered the goods with some stuff that happened in the radio station. Things happened that they thought there's no way they would, even if they wanted to bluff us, there's no way they could have done it the way they did it, because they didn't know the things that we knew. So that was really quite convincing. But if you have all the things that we've had on, if I really wanted to, mention one that was the most out there, was really very tangible and based in fact, and that was when we had Robert Hooke, who is a news anchor in Arizona, who wrote a book on who killed Bob Crane from Hogan's Heroes, and the story behind that, and the facts involved is probably one of the most out there subjects that I think we've covered.
Have you seen the film, Autofocus?
What's that?
There was actually a film called Autofocus that is on Bob Crane. I think it was directed by Schrader.
Okay, I have not seen that film. I just know the book. I thought there was a film on it, but I didn't. I didn't see it. I didn't know I was going to get involved in. I didn't know I was going to get involved in the subject as deep as I did.
Highly recommended.
Now, and I noticed on your website recently you mentioned Killing Pole. Did you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, Killing Pole is it's out on Amazon, by the way, and iTunes and all those formats right now, and you can watch it. You really should. It's a great film. I was approached about 2011 about Killing Pole, and a young man came and talked to me at the TV station and said they'd like to write my character into the film and told me what the film was about, and I thought that was great. And they were waiting for funding. 2013, they got back to me about me helping them and doing their Kickstarter, and a bunch of gentlemen came to my house who were all college professors. I mean, they were all extremely educated people. Made my brain hurt after a while. So then we did the film in 2013. It did some festivals and everything like that and got a lot of good reviews a couple years ago, and now it's found its way to, home video via Amazon. It's a dark comedy. It's a very deep, funny, and well thought out film with a really good message. And they wrote my character in there as a horror host very nicely. And I'm very I weigh pretty heavily on some things that happen in the film, and that's really cool part to be in. It's actually a very cool thing to have been part of. And the movie really it's got a good vibe about it. And and if I was going to get this is probably the biggest movie project that I've ever done is Killing Pole. A lot of good people that from Hollywood are in that film and did a lot of cool stuff. It's so much better than I know we're in the horror genre. If they would have wrote my character into some sort of slasher kind of a film, I think that the overall vibe of Killing Pole is it's a little bit of it's not above all that in a way. I mean, I'm not dissing the horror genre, but there's other films out there that are deeper than Nightmare on Elm Street. Even though I would love to do that stuff and I love those kind of films, but I'm also a fan of, other films that just have maybe a deeper spiritual human quality.
And you will be having your show starting at midnight tonight, Dr. Destruction's Big Top Radio broadcast after midnight. And I really do appreciate both of you appearing on the show of K&S Society TALK Live.
Well, thank you.
Is there anything both you would like to promote at this time to all the listeners out there?
Well, see Killing Pole the movie. Definitely see Killing Pole the movie and give it it's something different. But I think you'll like it. If you like horror hosts, if you like teen or college movies, I think that's really good. And tune into the Big Top Radio broadcast, at midnight. We always got somebody interesting on there, and usually the time goes by really quick. And it's just again, it's a cool vibe. We try to bring a down to earth quality to it, and I don't know. It seems to be some people like it, and we enjoy doing it, and it'll lead to the next thing. At least all I can say is the thing with the Crimson Theater and the whole Dr. Destruction thing, whatever that is, and turns out to be, it's building. It's slowly building. I wish it'd speed up a little bit though, because I'm getting old.
What about you, Olivia? Anything you want to promote?
Yeah, definitely check out the Big Top Radio broadcast that's on WLIP.com. You can listen to us live from there. And then check out Lilith Lovecraft on Facebook and give it a like so you can see all my fun modeling stuff. So thank you so much.
Like I said, it was a pleasure having both of you as guests. I enjoyed being on your show, and I loved having you on our show, and I hope we could do this again really soon. And we'll be definitely tuning into your show tonight at midnight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Once again, Doctor, thank you for joining us. And Olivia, thank you for joining us. You're both wonderful people. And have a happy holiday.
Have a happy holiday.
Happy holidays, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
And
I didn't know that. This has been a great show tonight.
Oh, it has been a wonderful show tonight. Yeah. And I'm really
the fanboy in me was just having a great time talking with Teri and just going over her career, shoot at Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and what's next.
we have a lot of big guests coming up. We have on December 6th, we have Todd Tucker that'll be joining us. He is behind movies like Geostorm, the Pirates of the Caribbean series, Smurfs, and he's going to be promoting his newest film coming out. Special guest host will be on that show, will be Scott Assman. And we have also on December 13th, Jack Schroeder, who's did a lot of great films. It's going to be a great show. He did films like Alone in the Dark from the 1980s with Donald Pleasance. You had Jack Palance, and you also had Martin Landau in that film. And he also did films like The Hidden, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and several others. And then we have on December 20th is our Christmas special. We're going to be having so far we have Mike McGurk, the WWF announcer from back in the 80s and 90s, will be joining us. Mike Lisa will be joining us. And also we have another special guest that's going to be joining us. That'll be let known on the next episode. Chris Alexandria will be on the 27th. We have so many. We also have, on January 10th, we have Keith Coogan joining us. And he is from films like Adventures in Babysitting and The Book of Love and Toy Soldiers. And Sean Clark will join us on January 17th. We also have Jim Cornette that's going to be joining us. So we have a list of great people joining us. But anyway, you guys have been great. I enjoyed the show tonight. There's so much. We had a lot of listeners. There was so many great things we touched on. And as always, I'd like to thank you all for joining the society. So from your host and yours truly, have a pleasant evening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Good night, everybody.